For over a year, something terrifying was haunting my every waking moment. It would whisper my deepest fears into my ear and relentlessly torment me. I was utterly convinced some higher being was trying to destroy me, but I was wrong. I wasn't being haunted. I was being saved. And that entity I believed was a destructive higher being, it was actually a lie my own brain cooked up to save my life. To really get how I ended up there, and how something so awful could become the most profound gift I've ever gotten, we need to go back. Back to a time when my life looked perfect on the outside, but was completely hollow on the inside. On paper, I had it all. A respectable job, a nice apartment, the admiration of my peers. I was that guy who always seemed to have the answer, who was climbing his way up the ladder. But behind closed doors, I was living in a personal hell I'd built for myself. My entire life was governed by a single all-consuming obsession: money. And it wasn't about being successful. It was a sickness. From the second I woke up to the moment I fell into a restless sleep, my mind was a frantic calculator of gains and losses. My greed had already made me lose over $50,000, and instead of learning, I only grew more desperate. I'd check my portfolio dozens of times an hour. A good day on the market meant I could breathe, that I had value. A bad day was a gut punch, a reminder of my failure, confirming I was worthless. My whole sense of who I was became tied to a number on a screen. My relationships fell apart. I'd be at dinner with friends, smiling and nodding, but my mind was a million miles away, running algorithms, totally consumed by a ticker tape of dread. I was a ghost at my own dinner table. There was this deep, gnawing emptiness inside of me, a void I kept trying to fill by chasing a financial win. But the more I chased, the bigger the void grew. I was starving, and I was trying to eat paper. It was an existence with no presence, no connection, no joy. I was obsessed with currency, but utterly bankrupt in spirit. And I knew deep down that I couldn't keep going like this. I was on a collision course with myself, and something had to give. That's when I decided to try psilocybin. I wasn't searching for some grand answer or a way out of the prison I'd built. Honestly, I just decided to try it, and it was pure luck that this wasn't your average drug. I did my homework setting up a safe, controlled environment, but I was completely unprepared for what was actually waiting for me. The start of the trip was beautiful. Colors were alive, music felt like a river flowing right through me, and for the first time in years, the frantic noise in my head just went quiet. I felt a sense of peace, a connection to everything, and then, without any warning, the whole experience just ripped apart. The beautiful patterns collapsed into something cold and sharp. A presence entered the room. It didn't really have a form, but it felt massive, ancient, and utterly terrifying. It was like a tear in reality, a window into a place of pure evil. It didn't speak in words, but in pure ideas zapped straight into my mind. And the ideas were simple. You are nothing. You are a fraud. Everything you've ever done is a joke. The terror was absolute. It was a cold, clinical kind of horror that picked my entire being apart. It knew my deepest secret, that underneath my pursuit of success, I felt like a total imposter. And it used that to completely unmake me. I spent what felt like an eternity cowering in front of this thing, this higher being that was showing me the truth of my pathetic life. When the trip finally ended, I was shaken to my core, drenched in a sweat that felt like ice. I thought I had peeked behind the curtain of reality and found some cosmic tormentor who was just getting started with me. That first encounter was only the beginning. The entity became a recurring character in my psychedelic journeys. Every time I went in looking for relief, it would be there waiting, and it was getting smarter. It started using my obsession against me, specifically. It would show me visions of my financial ruin, of me being broke and alone. It would replay my $50,000 loss over and over, whispering that all my work was for nothing, that I was doomed to lose it all because my greed made me a failure. The fear it created was unimaginable. In response, my sober life became even more consumed by my obsession. I worked harder, I grew more frantic, more desperate to build a fortress of wealth that could protect me from its prophecies. I was trying to outrun a malevolent being that lived inside my own head. The torment started to bleed into my everyday life. I'd be in a meeting and suddenly feel a chill, that same cold presence from my trips, and I'd be convinced it was watching me, judging me. My obsession was no longer a psychological quirk. It had become a battle for my very being. I was fighting for my very sanity against a being that seemed to hold all the cards. This went on for over a year. Trip after trip, I would face this thing, and every time I'd come out more broken and more afraid. The turning point didn't come from a place of courage, but from exhaustion. I couldn't take the full-blown torment anymore, but I also couldn't just stop. So I tried a different approach. I started taking smaller doses. My thinking was that maybe I could face this thing without it being so utterly frightening. Maybe I could study it without being consumed by terror. And it worked. The entity still showed up, but it was diminished. Its presence was less of a tidal wave of horror and more of a chilling fog. It went through its usual routine, the visions of failure, the whispers of worthlessness, but with the volume turned down. And in that less terrifying space, a new thought popped into my head. Quiet but crystal clear. This is boring. It was such a strange thought to have. Here was this cosmic being that had tormented me, and my reaction was boredom? It was like watching the same horror movie for the 10th time. I knew all the jump scares. I knew all the lines. The entity taunted me about losing everything. And because the terror wasn't paralyzing me, I realized I just didn't care anymore. In that moment, I let go of the fear, the endless grind. I surrendered not to the entity, but to the experience itself, whatever it might bring. And then, in that quiet surrender, something shifted. The menacing presence faltered. For the first time, not cowering in fear, I truly looked at it, and I asked it out loud, "What are you?" The response wasn't a voice. It was a feeling, a memory. It was the frantic, heart-pounding panic of a stock market crash. It was the fleeting hope of a small gain before it was wiped out. It was the jealousy I felt towards a wealthier colleague. It was the emptiness of my apartment filled with things I'd bought but that gave me no comfort. The entity was my obsession. It wasn't some being from another dimension. It was a perfect, horrifying reflection of the destructive force I had built inside myself. The lie was that this thing was an external force trying to destroy me. The truth was far weirder and way more profound. It was an internal force trying to save me. My own mind, in its unbelievable wisdom, had created a villain so terrifying that it forced me to finally confront my real-life monster. It knew I wouldn't let go of my obsession on my own, so it created an enemy that was tied directly to it. The only way to defeat the entity was to starve it, and its food was my obsession with money. And then, the entity dissolved. The cold, terrifying presence vanished, and in its place, an explosion of warmth and light filled my entire being. It was the most profound bliss I had ever felt in my life. It was the feeling of a prisoner stepping into the sun after a lifetime in a dungeon. The void inside me wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with an overwhelming sense of love and peace. The obsession was gone. Not just pushed down, but actually gone. The chains had simply fallen away. I laughed and cried for what felt like hours. I was finally free. In the days and weeks that followed, the world was brand new. I found joy in simple things. A conversation with a friend, the sounds of birds in the morning, the feeling of sun on my own skin. I ended up selling off what was left of my portfolio and put my energy towards things with real value, relationships, creativity, and helping others. My life was no longer about acquiring. It was about connecting. I came to understand that this terrifying journey was an act of profound self-love from a part of my own consciousness I never knew existed. My mind tricked me into believing a lie to save my life. It created a dragon so that I could learn how to become a hero. My journey was strange and deeply personal, but it taught me that even our darkest experiences can hold the seeds of our greatest transformations. It's a testament to the incredible, mysterious power of the human mind to heal itself. And that's why I'm sharing this. If you've ever had an experience that terrified you but ultimately changed you for the better, I'd love to read about it in the comments below. Your story might just be the light someone else needs to find their way through the dark. Looking back, I'm grateful for that terrifying entity. I'm grateful for the lie. It was the symptom of a sickness, but it was also the cure. That divine spark, that source of wisdom and healing, it isn't out there in the cosmos. It's inside of us. The light comes from within. It showed me that the biggest adversaries we face are the ones we create ourselves, and that the power to beat them is already inside us. The path to healing isn't always gentle. Sometimes your own mind stages a dramatic, terrifying intervention to get your attention, to scream a truth you refuse to hear. And if we're brave enough to listen, we might just find that what we thought was our destroyer was actually our savior in disguise.